about 10 years, and this is our first ever online event. I hope we do very well today. Please give us your feedback. We're going to be sending a survey out after we're done. We had asked on Facebook if there were any other platforms that you guys use that you like to use. Again, all feedback, comments, whether it's about this Lunch and Learn or just in general, we'd love to know what you guys think. Again, COVID really throwing a lot of folks for a loop. Brant and I decided to host this Lunch and Learn because of the time. This is a great opportunity to make sure that you guys are getting back to the roots of your brand, how it's working for you, how it's not working for you, and sort of realign. It's a really good opportunity. We're all having to flex. I know that I've been working with a lot of my clients to get them online. Suddenly the importance of having a website and an online presence as much as e-commerce is really important. So again, to your brand, making sure you're tending to it like your spring garden and giving it the attention it needs. Before we get into the meat of today, I want to thank our sponsors, of course. We couldn't do it without them. Our legacy sponsor, the North Bay Business Journal. They've been with us since day one. I want to also thank our annual sponsors, Sonoma Media Investments and Amateur Sonoma Media Group. You know them as a cluster of radio stations here in town. And then our education sponsor, Collab Working Space. They're in downtown Santa Rosa. They share that building with the Press Democrat. If you have any questions, Jessie Villa, she's on the call, and you're welcome to direct any her way. Back in January, we had made an announcement about increasing our member rates. That was going to happen April 1st. Because of COVID, we put a pause on that, but that will be happening July 1st. So what I want to give you guys a heads up on is if you have your membership now and you want to renew to lock in the discounted rate or the current rate, if you will, we're just going to tack 12 months on to the end of your membership, regardless of when it expires. So you might want to get in on that, save some money. Group memberships, those are now live on our website, which is really exciting. If 3 or more of you from your company or organization want to bundle up your membership and save some money there, same thing with the increase. You can get in now, renew it, and regardless of when your current membership expires, we'll just tack on those 12 months. In terms of sponsorship, we're always looking for great companies to partner with. If you align with our mission to educate, inspire, and connect North Bay marketers, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at info@pmgnorthbay.org. Events in general, like I said, a lot of companies are having to flex right now to accommodate to the sort of like online experience. We're likely going to be doing that a lot as well. Sarah, who is hosting and moderating today's webinar, she is incoming president for PMG, so she'll be taking the helm on July 1st. And so as we continue to roll out communications from PMG, you'll likely be getting more communications from her with her name in the signature anyway. And again, look for more online webinars. We'd love the opportunity to do this with you from the comfort of your own home, regardless of how this whole COVID situation plays out. So rules for today, just want to be sure everyone's clear because there's a few windows. The chat. There is a chat window. Use that for communication amongst yourselves, commentary to us as the panelists. Sarah, like I said, as the host, is going to be monitoring that. If you have specific questions about the program, today's Lunch and Learn, please use the Q&A. We are going to be doing a Q&A check after each segment. So again, we've broken it up into, I think, 3 or 4 parts. But go ahead and submit your questions, and then at the end of each segment, we'll look through the Q&A window to get those addressed. The raise your hand feature, if you guys are familiar with that, we're not going to be monitoring that, so just use the chat or the Q&A window, and we'll check in as we go. All right, I think we're good, right? Brant, nothing else, Sarah, to mention?
Yeah, I think you got it well covered, for sure.
Cool. Nice tall glass of water. Cool. Well, you guys know me. If you don't, my name is Natalia Jaramillo Gonzalez. I am the founder of Lemon Strike Creative Studios, and I have been a PMG board president this year. I joined PMG back in 2013 and then became a board member in 2016. I love this group so much, and it's been a really wonderful outlet and platform for professional development. Like I said, Brant and I were really excited to partner on today's topic, all about branding, because it's what we do. It's in Brant's name, so that's helpful. But it's something that we're really passionate about, and making sure that not just our clients, but folks that we know that are getting into business, whether it's for themselves or somebody else, you're an in-house marketer potentially, we love talking about this, and being in alignment with your brand is incredibly important. like I said, this is a great time to do that check and sort of connect with your brand. So I'm going to introduce Brant. If you guys don't know him, he has been working in design for as long as maybe we know. He started his own company in 1998. That then became a family affair with his wife and sisters. That turned into TIV branding. And as PMG president, we sort of really were excited to recruit him to join the board last year because we internally had also been having some conversations about PMG as a brand. And so today, the latter part of our program is going to be diving into the PMG brand and how we took care of it, how we assessed it, and how we laid out the plans for what you've likely seen as our rebrand that's sort of out in the world. So our first part for today is really talking about what is a brand. There's so many misconceptions out there. So I'm going to let Brant lead this portion. And thank you again for joining us. Brant, brains are yours.
Thank you, Natalia. Yeah, like Natalia said, my name's Brant Hookinga, founder and creative director at TIV Branding. Yeah, branding has been a passion of mine for a long, long time. Like Natalia said, maybe it's manifest destiny with my name being what it is. But I think what's fun about branding is it's evolved so much through the years. It's one of those things where as people start getting to know a concept or the term brand, it becomes more commonplace. And then oftentimes it becomes a little bit unclear what it actually is. So part of why we wanted to do this is we do feel like there are some misconceptions about what branding actually is. And we put here we go. I did do this, Natalia, like we said. We decided to keep it super high tech since we're doing that, you know. What is branding? The common answers are logo, obviously, icons, design with your fonts, your colors. I mean, it's another term for a company, right? Your marketing, your advertising, and that's all true. But the way we look at branding now is more as of a complete picture. So I actually wrote a blog about this recently, and this is the definition that I put out. So I'm going to read it. Branding is the promotion of a particular company, organization, or product through the use of unique design, messaging, and marketing initiatives. So yeah, all of those things that we talked about are covered, but it's really a bigger picture experience. It's the whole person. I've always said the logo is the front door. The brand is once you get inside. It's everything you experience. You know, everything from design, obviously. So what are the traditional assets that we would need to develop the logo, the colors, the font set, all that kind of stuff. Less traditional stuff like photo styles have become really, you know, if you can immediately recognize a brand's photo style, then you're really doing a great job of building those visuals. Messaging is a big one, something we're going to touch on with PMG. Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about brand voice, personality. It's warms the cockles of my heart when someone calls and says, "Hey, it's just like talking to your website." That's a big win.
Well done.
Partially because I wrote most of the website, but that we're doing a good job with that. So you know, design, messaging, marketing, your brand building approach, and we talk a lot about brand building over at TIV. And then the only other piece I want to touch on before I throw it over to Natalia is positioning versus branding. And this is actually something that we talk a lot about with clients. They'll come in and talk about their brand, and we'll end up talking about the positioning. And the positioning, the way I kind of define the two of them is the positioning is more internal. So what's the audience and how are you going to fill their particular need, versus branding, which is how you represent that positioning out in the world. It's a nuance, but it's a pretty important one. And especially when you start talking about actually getting yourself out there, promoting yourself. As an agency, we talk a lot about positioning because it allows us to fish in a pond versus an ocean if we're specific about that positioning. Anything to add to that, Ms. Natalia?
No, I think that's great. I mean, again, a lot of what we're talking about today are things that you already know. These are conversations you've had, especially as marketers. You've probably talked about some of this until you're blue in the face, which is a good thing. This is your role. This is sort of the piece you play in the greater puzzle of your company and your company's brand. Whether you're a freelancer, you own your own small company, or whether you're part of like a greater organization where you've got a whole marketing department. One of the things that I guess I should have prefaced this with is, again, you've probably heard this and it may feel redundant, but it's like going to any marketing conference. You've heard the things over and over again, but it's seeing it in a new light. And so what I really want to make sure that you guys, in using the chat feature today, is talk amongst yourselves. What is happening with your brand? What are the questions that are coming up, especially during this time? And then to answer your question, Brandon, if there's anything else, is these are really high level buckets. There's so much that goes within each of these, but that's what we want to do, is we want to encourage you to explore, to have those conversations and have them with other people, whether they're in your same industry or in different industries, but maybe similar verticals in terms of hierarchy or structure within the greater sort of global market. Have these conversations. A lot will come out, and we're going to deep a little bit into that later in terms of overlap with certain markets or industries, and how it's good to sort of think outside the box when it comes to that. So
yeah, absolutely. And my favorite thing that Bo talks about is, and Bo is part of this board and part of TIV branding as well, is the brand and how it is different in different channels as well. Like social media, it's basically like, it's like me when I'm at a bar versus when I'm at work might be I'm the same guy, but I'm a little different. I use a little different.
Yeah.
I think that is also part of that brand, and that reinforces what you were saying about those conversations that you need to have internally and with your team to see what feels right as you kind of navigate the different things.
Yeah. And I think that's why when we were writing the description for this Lunch and Learn, for me, it's very important to always communicate to clients or any marketer that I'm talking to that your brand is living, breathing. You have to think of it as a person, as something that you're constantly caring for, intending to. It's going to change. It's going to learn. It's going to mature. It's just the nature of the beast. So always keeping your finger on the pulse of how it's being received or how the message is being put out there. Again, about copy, certain language, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more. But it's the fact that it's not just a one-time thing that you do from the beginning and then you kind of just revolve everything around that. It's knowing that, yes, you're revolving everything around that, but as it evolves, so do you. So do your campaigns. So does your messaging. And maybe your brand sometimes might need that as well. So again, that's why we're having today's Lunch and Learn.
Absolutely.
So with any of these, with this initial part, I'm sort of establishing that branding is so much more than just colors and fonts and a logo. We're happy to open up the floor to any questions. Sarah, if there's anything there that you'd like us to start with, send them our way.
I've got one.
Sure.
Angie Robinson asks that she needs help figuring out complementary colors to expand their palette. Any suggestions for tools to do that?
Yeah, actually Adobe has a new thing that they've done that's really cool. And I don't know exactly. I think it might even, if you were to Google just Adobe color palettes, and what they'll do is they'll give you kind of, here's nature, and it'll be tied with a photo, and then here are and I think it's done in hex numbers, but is
that the color wheel?
Might be. I don't know what they call it, but it's really cool. It's a really cool tool because you can flip through and really get a immediate vibe from it.
Yeah, I really enjoy using the color wheel. I think that one is one of the more sort of techie resources that I share with clients when they're asking similar question. The other one that I love, which is sort of less techie, and I tend to use it more for clients that are just establishing themselves, but it's in a very similar fashion, is called Design Seeds. I believe the website address is design-seeds.com. Very similar. You get a picture and it aligns it with certain colors. It presents them in both, I believe, hex and maybe RGB, also CMYK potentially. But that's a great visual, same to Brand's point, as it gives you the visual and then the colors associated. And that one could be fun to play with as well, Angie.
Yep, good question.
I've added both those links to those tools into the chat bar if anybody wants to grab them.
Thanks.
And
And
that is the only question we have at this time.
Okay, and we are going to be collecting any questions, any answers, resources, anything like that. We will be posting them to the website and sharing that out after the webinar. So just keep an eye out for that. If you don't happen to catch it in the chat, we'll be sending it out again later.
Definitely.
Cool. All right, so we're going to get into a little bit more of this nitty gritty. Part 2, assessing your brand. I love it. So when clients approach agencies, and you might be a client, you might be on sort of the vendor side, depending on what the nature of the project is. But when clients approach us design agencies, they tend to come to the table with a set of needs, or at least their understanding of what it is that they need. And our job as sort of experts, you're coming to us because we're experts, our job is to decipher what you're saying, right? Reading between the lines and truly understanding if what you say you need is really what you need. Brandt's analogy, when we were planning this lunch and learn, really made a lot of good sense. And it's the surgery, right? So you go into your doctor's office and you're like, doctor, I need surgery on my foot. A smart doctor might stop and ask questions. You know, you don't want to walk into a doctor's office when you tell them you need foot surgery and have them just start cutting open.
Yep, jump up on the table. You're good.
Run the other way.
I stole that from Blair. I think it's from Blair Ann's The Win Without Pitching. That's it.
Yeah.
I've done that exactly. But I do think you say that to people and they're like, oh, okay, because we do a lot of the discover upfront stuff before things, and people just want to jump into pretty pictures, you know, and you got to know that you're headed the right direction. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Blair Ann's, by the way, a great resource that I got from you as well. Yeah, I love that analogy because it's so true. We've had clients that show up, they push really hard. These are the things that I know that I need. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is, and that's great. Happy to give the benefit of the doubt and say, yep, you're right. I appreciate how well you know your brand, but sometimes it's not. And again, it's our job to confirm that that is in fact the case. So the following pieces that I'm going to go through, again, you're probably familiar with them, but there really is sort of what I use as a marker for assessing a brand, whether you are looking for a refresh, whether you're looking for an entire overhaul, or really not looking for, but trying to determine if you need a refresh or an overhaul. Maybe you're starting a brand from scratch, or you're just doing your quarterly or biannual check-in, right? You're kind of temperature checking with the brand. First and foremost is what we would ask clients is, why do you need a rebrand? Or why do you think you need a rebrand? What are the markers that you have identified, whether it's through analytics, whether it's through comments, survey results? Why do you think that you need what you're asking us to do? That helps provide a lot of foundation as to what the conversation is going to look like, and to determine, is it a visual piece, potentially meaning logos, colors, fonts, look and feel, or is it messaging? Is it your marketing collateral? Is it your avenue? Are they the avenues that you're using for digital marketing, traditional marketing? So there's a lot of pieces that go into play with that. Now, the 7 elements that I'm going to cover are, again, my high-level markers. And there's a lot that goes into each of them. And again, these are the conversations that we're encouraging you to have either with your C-levels, your managers, or even just within your teams. This is really good to be in alignment. First and foremost, of course, is purpose, your why. What is at the heart of what you do? Do you have a clear purpose for your brand? Most often than not, your why tends to be sort of, oh, I see a hole in the market. There's a hole in this niche that I'm trying to fill. This is going to be my thing. That's great, but that is not the why, right? So what's at the heart of it? Somebody wakes up in the morning and they say, I want to change the world. Cool. How, right? Don't tell me the product. Don't tell me the process of how you're going to get there, but what's at the foundation of that? What are you trying to provide to or share with the world through what it is that you're offering? Then your mission, your values, your vision for the company, the product, the service, the greater good that you're trying to bring to the table. Have you taken the time to draft that into writing? That text, those words that you're choosing, are really, really important. Having that clear visual. I've walked into some offices, and I've seen this a lot in actually the nonprofit space, where you walk in and you see this mission blatantly painted on a wall. It's the first thing you see when you walk in. As an organization, this is our mission. It's very closely tied into your purpose and your why. But having that visual and understanding everything that you do revolves around that, and how is it doing that successfully is a really great reminder, right? So sometimes we get a hair up our butts and we're like, oh, we want to do this one campaign, or we want to change this up, or what if we added another 10 colors to our palette? Because God knows we've heard all of that. Is that still in alignment with what you've got written on that wall? So putting that into writing, creating actual documents with the right words can really help keep focus on your brand. And again, as the brand grows and evolves, is that still true? Has that changed? Okay.
Brant, you want to hop in for a second?
Yeah. What do you need me to do?
Take over since we lost Natalia.
Oh, did you lose her? Okay. I was gonna type it in there. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties, right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's see. This is obviously more Natalia's passion than mine, but I'm gonna run with it. So after the mission, values, and vision, which is actually something we've been working on a lot over at TIV, it's one of those things that I usually, is she back?
Sorry.
Oh, technology. I just finished the whole section, so I was
well,
about to jump in, but
thankfully we can both speak to this, so that's great. Where did I lose you? So sorry.
I think you were finishing up on the mission, values, and vision.
Mission and values. Got it. Yeah. So what I was jumping into was voice and personality. Did I tell you about my exercise there?
No, I did not hear the exercise.
Okay. Sorry about that. So the voice and personality for me is a really fun exercise, because I think where the other pieces sometimes are kind of hard to put into words, asking, a founder of a company, what's your purpose? What's your why? What's your mission? Sometimes feels really unattainable. It's hard to sit down and just write that out. This takes a lot of time and note-taking and brainstorming and effort. But sometimes the voice and personality can be a really good starting point. And the exercise I play there is, if you could embody your brand as a person, who would it be? So maybe it's a professional athlete, maybe it's an actor, maybe it's an activist, a politician, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a TV star, whoever it is. Sometimes it's really helpful to envision your brand as a person. And I'll give you a great example. I was helping launch a brand a few years ago, and it was a very female-centric company. It was founded by 2 women. Their target demographic was women, but they couldn't put into words like who that woman was. And I say woman specifically, and we'll cover that in a minute. And after a lot of conversation, we landed on Susan Sarandon. Susan Sarandon was a choice because everyone likes Susan Sarandon. There's something about her that's very likable. She's really powerful. She speaks her mind. She's an activist. This was a cannabis brand, so it's somebody that supports cannabis, but they're not sort of at that point where everyone knows them as a cannabis fan or user. She is really established. She's intelligent. She's sort of like have her hands in all of these different types of things that really felt like they related to the brand. So sometimes doing that exercise is really helpful. And if you've never done that with your brand, I might encourage you to do that. It is a fun exercise, especially within a team. But yeah, so that's part of what I like to do to try and find the voice or personality. The other thing, again, is, has that always been the brand? For established brands, I want you to ask yourself that question. If how you feel about who that person might be that represents the brand, has it always been that? If not, where did you start? How has it evolved? And where might you be going, right? Who might be their like BFF that might take over the show later? I don't know. Think of Thelma and Louise, maybe. Once you've embodied that and you have a better idea, you almost can see a face of who you're talking to in terms of what the brand feels like. Your target audience. right? Your demographic. Who are they talking to? Who is Susan Sarandon talking to? Do you know them? A lot of people don't know their target demographic. And again, getting to who is that woman, singular, it's very important to identify that one person, that one type of person that is your target demographic. And I always go to the ripple effect on this one. If you think about dropping just one single drop of water into a glass, you get the ripple effect. If you can hone in into that one drop and know that you're speaking to that person in the way that you need to be speaking to them, in the way that resonates with them, that ripple effect will happen. So say Brant and I are friends. Somebody is pitching to him and he's like, yeah, I totally buy this. I love this brand. I love what they're doing. I love what they stand for. Oh, and their product is great. Hey, Natalia, I think you would love this too. We've learned this week on Facebook that we have extremely similar tastes in music. So if Brand comes to me and says, Natalia, you too would love this product, I'm going to jump on board. Brand is somebody that I trust. So don't try and get me in the process. You want to get Brand, and in the process, you'll be getting everybody that resonates with Brand, right? It's that ripple effect. Second piece to the target demographic is most times, most brands have more than one target demographic. You might have a primary, secondary, tertiary. Maybe they are ripples of each other, depending on sort of what industry or vertical you're in. Sometimes they're very clear different demographics. A good example of this is I used to work for a propane company. I was running a marketing department for propane. A lot of people think propane for your barbecue, okay? Well, if you live in the sticks, propane is really good for heating your entire house. So your primary demographic for us anyway was homeowners, right? Who are homeowners that are off the grid, kind of in the sticks, that would need access to that fuel. Secondary demographic for us was actually school districts. States outside of California, unfortunately, can leverage propane. It's a much cleaner fuel. So we were trying to get school districts on board for buses, right? Third demographic for us, civic agencies, police and fire, perfect examples, city vehicles, again, clean burning fuel. So if you understand your product and you've done your homework to identify your voice, your mission, your target demographic, it's very likely that through that you might identify a secondary and a tertiary. And it's really important to know those because those are really going to help set the foundation for any campaigns that you've got planned and moving forward. Additionally, to the messaging, right? We were talking about that earlier. What is the voice? What's the tone? What's the language that you should be using with your brand? Competitive analysis. This one is also another one that's always bound to change. I mean, think about it here. I know, Brant, you've spent a lot of time working in the wine industry. New wineries are popping up all the time, right? That space is massively competitive. So when you're coming into an area, especially like ours, with a new brand, what do you have to offer? What does the competition look like? How well do you know your competition? Are you researching? Are you surveying folks? What are you offering that's different than what they're offering? How do people know to look for your product versus somebody else's? Are you leveraging specific search terms? Are you creating a certain voice or personality? There has to be something that you can use as comparison in terms of like, okay, how do I fit into this? But then also the differentiation piece, right? How do I sit outside of that to really be like the guy out here that like has this one thing that you can't find anywhere else? Sometimes it's as simple as really the integrity of your team. It's at the foundation of the people that you have working for you. Sometimes it's the product. Sometimes it's the look and feel. There's a lot around it. And again, each of these are very high level buckets that we're encouraging you to dive into and dissect and do your homework on. The more people, the more brains, sometimes the better. Yes, sometimes it can get a little cloudier, too many cooks in the kitchen. But having these conversations are really exciting for a brand and making sure that we're all in alignment. The one thing that I wanted to bring into the competitive analysis, speaking of wineries, was, are there any parallel industries to yours? Okay, this is a point that Brant brought up that I loved. A wine might be parallel industry for olive oil. I spent a few years working in the cannabis space. We were looking a lot at the cosmetics industry, specifically around packaging and look and feel and voice and tone. So again, think outside the box. What other industries could you potentially look at, even if it is for competitive analysis? Yes, you're not directly competing against them, but it's how are they competing with each other in the market? What are the differentiating factors and what can you learn from that? Thinking outside the box on that point is really fun.
Yeah,
you say something?
I didn't want to talk over the top of you. always hard in these. That has been a big, since we've started doing that research, has been a big eye opener for us, because especially when you talk about like wine industry being a great example, there's a very, this is how this is done, part of that being the 3-tier system. But if you can bring something in from a totally different but kind of connected industry, it's amazing how disruptive it can be and how helpful it can be.
Absolutely. I love that word disruptive because I think it has a negative connotation, but like stirring the pot a little bit in your own industry sometimes is super exciting, super exciting. And I think as marketers, we all already live by the tune, or we should be, if you're not, highly recommend it, is you have to test to find out. There's only one way to find out, and it's to test. Throw some stuff on the wall and see what sticks, right? The last 2 elements that I want to cover, the first being positioning. Really important, of course. How do the products or services that are provided by your brand fill that particular need in that target market? Do you differ enough from one of your competitors to really stand out, or are you doing a lot of the same things? I can't tell you how many times we'd have, when I was working at the cannabis agency, we'd sit with 5 brands in a day, and every single one we'd ask them, what's your differentiator? If you were to say, what makes you different than the next guy? Every single person was like, well, we do handcrafted, artisanal, organic. Yeah, you and everybody else, okay? That's super great. You can write it down. But you got to think deeper, right? Really peel back those layers. And again, looking at similar people in the similar industry, but also outside of your industry, looking at these differing verticals, really, really helpful. I like the idea of stirring the pot, disrupting. Thank you for that word, Brent. And then your brand promise. This really ties it all together. I think the promise for me is almost a culmination of all of these different elements, especially the purpose or the why. Simon Sinek. I mean, we've all heard him. If you haven't, please find his TED Talk. I can't even remember what year it's from at this point, but he talks about his golden circle. Were you able to print that out for me, Brent?
Well, Natalia, I just saw that note in our notes.
Hell yeah. Listen, who better to draw it than a designer?
There you go.
There it is. Look at that. Fast and dirty, just the way I like it. So what I love about this example is it's just so clear. It's black and white, okay? I'm just going to quickly explain the example that Simon uses when he presents this golden circle. Apple. The what, the outer ring. When somebody says, what do? We make great computers. How? Well, they're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Why? Why are you in business? What is your promise? Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. That is why people buy your product. That is your why. That is your promise. So the way we challenge status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Using that example from Apple is, to me, it's so, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it because that's really hard to do. Putting all of what your entity does as a brand into something so clear and concise is not easy. This branding process for most clients takes a minimum of 6 months. It can take really long, but if you can sit down, if you do your homework, if you're asking the right questions, if you're bringing in the right people, if you're surveying, all of this homework that you're doing is what leads to something like that. Some other great examples of brand promises, BMW, yes, they sell cars, but their brand promise is to deliver the ultimate driving machine. Very clean. Coca-Cola, they sell soda to inspire moments of optimism and uplift. I mean, that's like crack open a Coke and hear it sizzle and think about it next warm day. I love that one. And then H&M, one of my favorite brands, more fashion choices that are good for people, the planet, and your wallet. Now you're just doing a good thing by buying your clothes. Oh, and it's affordable. Excellent. Yeah. So again, once all of these elements have been reviewed, you've done your homework, you've assessed sort of what your messaging is and what it looks like across all of the facets. That's really the point at where we as agencies can begin to develop a better understanding of what it is that you actually need versus what you think you need, okay? If through that process we learn that an overhaul isn't needed, it could likely just be a consistency issue. right? Are all of your elements in alignment? Are you using, yes, the right colors, the right fonts, the right everything across everything? Is the messaging consistent? Are you using the same words, that same tone? There's a lot of elements that go into play with that. But again, these 7 elements for me are the foundation and the markers, high level, of trying to identify where you are with your brand, how well do you understand your brand, how has your brand evolved, in what direction is it evolving, and what are the pieces that you need to put into play in order to meet that realignment and then move forward again. This is something that you and your team should be doing, again, whether it's on a quarterly or on a biannual basis, but it's really important to keep that temperature check because it is a living, breathing thing.
Yeah, I think that the other piece of that, Natalia, is it's really easy to the reason why I like all this foundational stuff that you're talking about is it's really easy to get bored of your brand. I mean, you see it every day, right? You how many times clients have come to me and said, I want to do this, I want to change this. I'm like, why are we changing that? Like, is there a strategy behind it? Because you see it all day, every day. If you're lucky, your audience sees it maybe once or twice a week. Like, we're talking consistency, you're bored, you know. So if you can use this research as a way of, maybe it is a good move to do that, but if you can put it against something to make sure it's a good move,
Yeah.
there's value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, let's open it up for some Q&A. It looks like we do have some conversation happening. Sarah?
Yes. So first question is from Taylor Eason. I do branding all day long for others, but it's tough to do on my own company. Any advice?
That's such a great question, Taylor. I have my answer, but I'll let Brent go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think if you can walk yourself through, I think a good branding, a brander, is that the way, someone who's good at branding, is able to walk a mile in another person's shoes, right? And it's really all about empathy and understanding what this audience is. So I think if you're able to define that audience and walk yourself through these exercises, I think you'd be surprised how far you could go, Taylor. I mean, really, plus it's really fun. And then the other piece is like Natalia and I will have, lunch every we were trying to do it every month, back when we could have lunch together, and we would talk about that with each other, like bring in people that are outside of your brand, and throw stuff at them. So it makes sense.
Yeah, for me, all of that. I mean, I think us meeting on a regular basis or semi-regular basis, having other people sort of give you input on your brand is also super helpful. I mean, that's part of the research and that surveying process, no matter how informal it might be. I think it also depends on the person. Sometimes, I've had clients that have come to the table and they've been saying like, well, I am my brand. Okay, well, let's dissect who you are, and does it align with your intentions, your why, with your product potentially, your service, your offering? Sometimes they don't match. And so it becomes really hard to have a conversation with somebody and tell them, I know that you're launching your brand, but you're not your brand, right? So sometimes you have to be very unselfish and remove yourself from that. I personally have a really hard time not being critical of myself as I've tried to go through like my own branding process for my company. And so I've actually just brought in other people. I've brought in other marketers and other branders to be like, you do the job. I'll pay you for it. Because sometimes it's easier for me to have somebody say something to me and then realize like, oh God, yeah, I didn't even see that in my brand, or that could be a potential niche to fill, or that could be something that I could sort of adjust myself towards. So sometimes it is helpful to have an outside, but if you can start with that initial work to, like Brant was saying, start doing some of that foundational research, even within yourself on your own, that's really helpful to bring to the table when you do decide to bring somebody else in, whether it's just for surveying your feedback, or you decide to hire somebody to do that for you.
All right, next question from Karen Graves. Do you have a resource to use for finding brand personality or persona?
A specific resource for finding brand personality. I don't have anything specific with that. I mean, I'm sure there are a ton of resources online that maybe folks trust to use. I do want to open that question though to any of our members or anyone attending the webinar to share your comments in the chat for that. But I think when I go through that initial exercise, like I was talking about with trying to embody your brand into a person, usually that really opens up for conversation. So if somebody, again, when my client said Susan Sarandon, I'm familiar enough with Susan Sarandon that it was easy for me to start asking a lot of questions. If it's somebody I'm not familiar with, I would have started asking questions to tell me more about that person. What do you know about them? What do they do in the world? Why did you like them? Why did you pick them? And that typically, again, opens more conversation, more questions, at least for conversation. How about you, Brant?
Yeah, well, I see that as a tool to kind of help people that probably don't think about this stuff
Right.
day out. You know, like it's so much easier to put a persona behind it. So then, like you said, Natalia, if you start talking to them about what that means to them, that's really where you uncover the value in it.
Right.
Like I have a totally different perception of this person versus what another person might, you know. So.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have any specific tools. I think your process makes a ton of sense, though.
All right, next question from Natalie. How do you find where your target market is living and or sitting?
During COVID, they're sitting somewhere.
Probably on their couch.
Yeah, so for me, and Brant, maybe you have a different process. For me, target demographic is one of those things that is a little bit like the throw something on the wall and see what sticks. And really, I should say that the whole branding process, especially if you're a brand new company, you're starting from ground zero, is very much that, right? It's like, you just need to trust that what you're doing and how you're feeling about this and what you're trying to bring to the table or to the market with your product, service offering, whatever it might be, with your why, is going to fill a need. And then you have to learn, you have to be listening, right? But with the target audience, again, more so in that case than others, is testing. It's listening. It's how are people being receptive. There's a lot of tools out there that you can put into place, whether it's on your website, whether it's through surveys, chat functionality, things like that, where you can constantly keep that open line of communication. Obviously, social media is the primary tool for that. What kind of engagement are you getting? What kind of feedback are you getting? I see Ed here commenting, remember to use social media. Absolutely. You just have to be listening. I see so many brands that just put things out into the world because I love this. I created this. This feels good. It's in alignment with what I know to be true. Put it out there. And then they don't go back and check. They don't listen. They don't read. They don't look at their analytics, look at their conversions. There's a lot of elements that go into play with that help answer that question for you. And again, you're trying to make the best decisions based on what you have, but that's why you have to be nimble. It's a living, breathing thing.
Yeah, I agree with all that. The other thing that we do, since half of TIP branding kind of started as a SEO, search engine optimization company, we actually, and I'm trying to uncover the best way to do it, but we use a fair amount of our SEO tools as a way of kind of understanding. The way I see it, I know what I do when I want to know something, I Google it. So that to me is just this amazing resource. So we use that as a layer of the research we do, on top of kind of just, I think that there's a certain amount of, you just need to trust your gut, like Natalia. Once you have some general guidelines, trust your gut and what feels right, and then test it.
Yeah, we actually did a really, really wonderful segment at our conference in 2019 with Laurel Gregory, who was creative director at the Hybrid Creative at one point. She's an incredible branding and strategy specialist, and we brought her in specifically because of that. There's a lot that the numbers can tell you: data, analytics, conversions, visits, likes, follows, all of that. And it's really good to see all of that. But there has to be a balance between that and your gut. right? There's something to be said for intuition. If you are in good alignment with your brand and you are listening and you are nurturing it and you're giving it sort of what it wants, then it's play that dance between data and intuition. It's really important to have both. Yeah.
For sure.
Right, check.
All
Cool.
right.
Any other questions right now, Sarah?
We do. One more from Natalie. Any tools for marketing, writing, and keeping tone consistent?
Yeah, my recommendation for that is if you don't have somebody in-house who's really sort of in charge of messaging and copy, maybe you have a contractor. I'm not sure. I assume it probably depends on the industry because obviously there's some technical knowledge that needs to go into some of that. But I would say is be consistent by having the same person work on that. It is very important that the whole team obviously is in sync with that. But I mean, in our own projects with my clients, we have a copywriter and she is the person that is always in every meeting with this client. She's familiar with the client, who they are, what they want, how they are, how they run their business. She has complete insight into this client and is exclusively the one that's seeing how the brand evolves. She's paying attention on social media. She's looking at the engagement, how people are responding. She's responding to them in the same manner as the tone exists. So I think it really comes down to consistency, especially in messaging.
Yeah, we've done basically brand style guides for brand voice before, and depending on the client and how much it needed to be reined in, we've gone as far as, do we use this type of word? Do we write don't or do not? Do we, we've gone that far before. I'm not honestly sure how effective that is, but I think it's a good exercise for people to understand, especially the people vetting the copy to know if that feels or off brand, why, But yeah, I think it's a pretty down and dirty process that you just need to stay on it to keep that consistency going.
Yeah.
Perfect. One more. Any specific places you would recommend to go online for inspiration in regards to a brand refresh, similar to the Apple and BMW examples?
I know my favorite is called Underconsideration. I should look it up to make sure I've got that right. I'll send that out, but it's basically they highlight all the different rebrands that they're seeing out there, and then they review them, and they they put them based on the industry. So you could go in and you could look at all the rebrands for nonprofit or whatever it is at that point. I think that's what it is. Underconsideration. Oh, you should.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a great website. Underconsideration.com/brand new. They also, if you work in restaurant industry, they have one that's all about menus, which is really cool to see what people are doing in menus because they get really creative. So it's a good resource just for general inspiration and to see what's going on out there.
I love that. I've learned something new today. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm going to check that one out. Thank you.
And just a reminder to all participants to make sure you put your questions in the Q&A. I'm trying to keep up with the ones in chat, but if it moves up, I might lose it. So please put all questions in Q&A so I can just track it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for manning all this. Cool. Well, we're going to keep jamming through here. Part 3 is going to be our super exciting PMG case study. We've been really looking forward to putting the new brand out in the world, and you guys have probably seen our logo updates and trade dress updates, sort of new cover images, and on LinkedIn, and I think we did Twitter and Facebook, and we're starting to really trickle out all of the elements of the new brand for PMG. And again, a huge thanks to Brand for leading the pack there, along with our other board members, Bo and Nate. And this was a collaborative effort that has really been in the works for quite some time now. I'd say probably about 1.5 years. We've been having these conversations and listening to all of you. Brant will talk a little bit about he'll fully talk about our process, I'm going to support him in the early phases since he wasn't a part of the board at that time. But I think it's really helpful for us, especially with you guys, our audience, our members, to sort of see the evolution of PMG and why for us it was so important to do what we did. So let's start there.
All right, sounds good. I'm gonna screen share, hopefully. Bear with me. Assuming we can all see this. Whoops, there we go.
Awesome.
I'm gonna move that. All right, we're good, Natalia? You can see it all right?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can. Looks great.
There you go.
That's us. That's today.
Look at that, PMG case study. So let's jump on in. And this is, like Natalia said, as it turns out, I now understand why I was invited to be on the board, which is, it's cool. They were talking about this prior, they being previous boards, and a lot of discussions around the evolution of PMG. And I have a slide where it shows some of the old artwork as well that you'll get to see. But I don't know, Natalia, if you wanted to go specifically into some of those discussions.
Yeah, I can definitely start here. So like I said, we have been having this conversation about PMG for quite some time. Like I said, PMG is almost a 10-year-old organization. It's had a lot of change, both in terms of board members, which of course infuse their own style and feel and voice. And PMG never really had, I don't think from the beginning, a very clear brand strategy. And the longer that PMG has been in existence, the more we started to recognize that and the importance of really giving it its own personality, again, sort of trying to connect it to somebody. And so for us, we started with just general board discussion, sharing our opinions and our review of the brand, where it was at that time, everything from logo and colors to voice and copy. I'm sure for those of you that have been part of PMG for quite some time, you could probably say that you've noticed when we post to social media, when we're creating copy for our events on Facebook or even on Eventbrite on our website, the language, the tone was slightly different. So for us, it was really important to align. So sharing our opinions and what we thought PMG should be as a brand and as an entity for all of us to be able to get behind, but really be able to speak to it authentically was at the focus of this. So Nate Bauer, who is on the board and also works over at Exchange Bank in town, he helped lead our initial exercise through this that you see on the screen now, which is the Lean Canvas. It's a great resource. Again, we'll share it with you in case it also supports your internal conversations with your own teams. But he took us down through each of these elements, really nitty gritty, no bad ideas, no bad questions, just to really create a lot of that initial conversation and be able to extract the high level pieces. And then some of the points that we thought maybe hadn't been infused into the brand that we would like to see in the future because we thought they were important for X, Y, and Z reasons, or things that we were doing that maybe didn't feel as essential anymore, again, because maybe the brand had evolved. So again, this is a Lean Canvas exercise. This is where we started, and you can see the different segments of it. If you can't really see it too clearly, again, we'll post this along with all of the resources from this webinar. But this is where we began, and at this time, once we got all of these questions or segments addressed, this is where we realized, okay, we need the big guns. So taking all of this and then actually creating copy out of this, creating a voice, creating a look and feel, creating the colors and new fonts and everything required a little bit more team effort. And so this is where we started courting Brant and Bo from Tip Branding to join our board. And it was really the best solution that we could find. I mean, it's worked out so beautifully. So I'll let you keep going on to, I believe, our next slide, which is brand drivers or brand purpose. Oh, that's right, the LDJ. This was a fun exercise.
Yeah, this one I actually was part of this. And again, this was Nate guided us through this. And I don't know where this comes from, frankly, but.
The LDJ is from AJ and Smart.
Okay.
Really, really big consultancy.
Basically what we did is we went through and he gave us a certain amount of time that we just had to write down as many things as possible that we wanted to see. What was it? How do you frame it? Implemented it as part of PMG, or it was, you know, everything from, I wish I could read them.
Yeah. Yeah, this was, to your point, I mean, it's a lightning decision jam, right? Tell me about the brand. Tell me what we do, what we don't do well, what we do well, what we should be doing. What are our priorities in terms of our service offerings? How should we be offering via which avenues? What kinds of partnerships should be getting in place? I mean, this was really a free-for-all to have all of our board members, which of course we span a few different industries. Yes, we're all marketers, but we all have our own niche. We offer different things. So we were each individually already going to be bringing something to the table on how we saw PMG and what our goals for PMG were as individuals. And so seeing all of this here, and especially not having that filter, right? Nate was very encouraging of, there are no bad ideas. Grab your pad of Post-its and go to town. Put up as many as you can. Felt really empowering for us to think about the brand as something that we really, I mean, we do obviously love and care for it, but as something that we really wanted to tend to and see grow.
Right. Absolutely. There was all kinds of fun stuff that came up here. And we, I mean, the way you see it now is we then organized it basically on things that were connected. Whether it was, you know, a rebrand, which ended up being an important piece of it, or whether it was, you know, starting a podcast, or, you know, we basically tried our best to organize everything together.
And we will share the video with you of the LDJ so you can see how it's done from the AJ and Smart standpoint. It's a really cool process.
Absolutely. And then we took those LDJ results and Nate inserted them into the BCG matrix.
Yeah.
Basically, big picture, which is the way I like to live in this kind of stuff. It's you're assigning a effort level and an impact level, and the high impact, low effort are really the ones that you probably want to start with, because they're obviously like I just said, going to have the biggest impact, and it's going to be the quickest to do. So then it becomes the decisions about you know, prioritizing what goes where.
Right. And there's something to be said for sort of like, what is low hanging fruit? Yes, it's low hanging and that's exciting, but will it provide a really big impact? So it causes you to really think about the brand again as a living being. You know, we could feed it this, but how long does that last? Is it really nutritional? What are the long-term impacts? Or if we do a little bit more work and we feed it this, will we actually be getting the results that we're looking for? Does it really help serve the end goal? So this process really made us put our thinking caps on to everything that we wanted to see come to life for the brand, and what made the most sense based on, again, what we know, elements for us that were really important. You know, we're a volunteer board. We meet once a month. We're working on PMG and events year round, but we only have FaceTime about once a month. So what is realistic for us? What is important to our members? What's important to us as board members representing the brand, and establishing partnerships through sponsorship and just other partnerships for PMG to help put out the word about what it is that we do through our professional development. So this process, the BCG matrix, was both really fun and a little painful, but it's good because that's growth.
Absolutely. Okay. We also did some research into our audience. And this again, Nate, it looks like you did a good chunk of this. We keep on bringing you up, buddy. Thank you.
Everyone plays their part.
We surveyed and interviewed members and sponsors. So those were conversations. Also conveyed some one-on-one interviews with a sampling of members. So talking about job information, day-to-day struggles, job aspirations, and then how they interact with PMG currently, and potentially how they could want to do that. And pull those together into kind of those were probably good examples of personas, like actual personas that we were able to use to hold against some of the decisions we were just trying to make. And then member audience analysis. So that was looking through LinkedIn and I can't see it because it's covered by people, but over here on the right, it talked through how many people we had that listed themselves in communications, social media, and this is listed in how many members we had that were listed under those areas. So what it did is it helped us come to the conclusion of who our primary, secondary, and tertiary audiences were. And that was an interesting one. And you know what? I just realized that that didn't get changed, Natalia.
Where's that?
On that. The primary audience, we talked about being marketing doers,
Yeah,
marketing management. So that was because we realized the majority of the people that were coming to the programs and were participating in PMG were not the marketing management level people. They're the people that will be there soon, and so they're the doers. And then that secondary was the audience is actually the marketing management, and that was important. I know from my perspective, I felt like that was really important because I know a lot of what we're doing is continued education for people. And that is something that a lot of managers are looking for their team. So making sure we take that into account as we're developing the brand. And then the tertiary audience being the small businesses, which really is a combination of the two. And I think what we came to, Natalia, is that we do probably have primary, secondary, and tertiary audiences, but they're all pretty aligned. And we don't want to, have a big differentiation between all of them.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that's unique to our organization and the niche that we're in as a networking group, if you will, not a club. And so it really is important that as you're doing this for your own company, but especially within your own vertical, within your own industry, that you do determine, because if those audiences really feel very segmented, that's really good for you to know. That's going to help planning campaigns and your marketing efforts much clearer. For us, it just happened to be like there was a lot of overlap already. And so it was easier for us to just sort of like pin it on a role versus fully different segments.
And from all of that came our, so combining that brand purpose and the audience became the brand drivers. And I won't read through all of them, but it's basically the functional, I get to learn more about marketing, the economic, I'm able to make more money with a larger network. Emotional, I feel more qualified and secure in my field. Self-expressive, my network, employer, and coworkers know I stay up to date on the latest trends. So these were important drivers. I think this is a really great exercise. Again, as kind of using as well, let's look back at what we're doing. Does it line up with these brand drivers? And if it doesn't, we need to make a conscious decision to go outside of it.
Right. These are really nice to see in writing. It just embodied a lot of confirmation for us, but also things that we hadn't really considered in certain ways that helped us sort of realign of how we want PMG to be communicated sort of as an entity, but through our copywriting, our visual, everything, especially with our events, because that's our bread and butter.
Yeah, and I will say that while it was focused on branding and visuals and messaging, it also, I think, has played a lot into how we've evolved the services we're offering as well. So.
Right. Okay.
And we did competitive research as well. This one was admittedly pretty low key. We didn't see the need to really dig into a lot of competitive research. That's not at all what I would recommend for a lot of different industries or types of companies. But in this case, we were pretty clear what the other groups that we had going around, and that we basically were competing for people's time. So we've got YPN, the 2030 Club, Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, and then associations like AIGA. The conclusion we did come to is that PMG is way more focused on a specific skill, which is marketing, and that branding should reflect the job and skill development less than networking and social development. So,
right. We're more than a club, yo.
Right. Don't call us a club. Not around Natalia, at least. Okay, and then the branding. And so apparently it was PSMG. Maybe you can speak to that, Natalia.
Yeah, PSMG originally started out as Professional Services Marketing Group, but of course that very quickly expanded. There were a lot of members that came from companies that weren't just a service in sort of that professional. You guys look at what are these called? Those NICS codes were much more than just a professional service, and so it made more sense to just turn that into the Professional Marketing Group. So we dropped the S probably, God, my guess is like 2017, I think.
Yeah, and from a visual standpoint, I was looking at all of this just to kind of understand where we felt like we were, where we came around was that if you look at the current brand or the old brand, now not the current brand, the lockup itself, so the logo lockup felt outdated. We did really like how recognizable the M was, and we knew we wanted to carry that forward, whether it be kind of a iteration of that M or a complete departure, and that the color palette felt outdated. The messaging had progressed through the years, which is great, but it had progressed enough so that it didn't, it was moving faster than the visuals, and so they didn't match up. And then the conclusions were that PMG has lost its focus, the messaging has progressed, but the visuals have not. There may be equity in the brand, so an exploration of an evolution and revolution would be valuable. So that's one of my favorite ways to describe that to clients is, you have equity in your brand, and every time you go away from that brand, you're basically taking money out of your bank account. And there are folks that are basically like, tear it down, I want to build a new one. So that would be your revolution. Sometimes that doesn't make sense, especially if you have a lot of equity in that brand, and we talk more about evolution. So we decided we wanted to look at an evolution and see if that could potentially lead us to more of a revolution.
Yeah.
Okay, so the findings, we've evolved away from our current brand. We're bold, smart, fun, energetic, and modern, and our branding should be as well. So objectives appear more professional. We're so much more than a club. There you go, Natalia. And then highlight the evolution of the group. So then we jumped into the process of design. Basically, I just jumped into concepting round one. So this is the way we design. Obviously, there was the design part of it, which I'm not going to go into it, but the presentation we did to the large group, the board. And this is something that I always implement when I'm doing branding, especially when you're talking about a large group. We did a rebrand for a city organization that I think had 75 members. So we had to develop a pretty boxed in process to make sure that we avoided groupthink, and we had everybody really taking their opinions and putting it into play. So we started having people take silent notes for each initial concept, and then they went back and talked about it afterwards. So.
And can I just jump in? I want to say how much I really loved this process. It's actually something that I've started implementing a little bit more in my own process. It was really powerful, I think, to not talk to one another during that time, and really just kind of brain dump onto paper our own thoughts. I realize how easily, and I've seen this happen with clients and within marketing teams, how easily one person or more can be swayed by a single comment from one person. I'm even guilty of that myself. So I really enjoyed that process, and I think that really helped us get clarity and actually see other people's points with sort of fresh eyes. It didn't feel like we had to like convince one another. It was really great.
Yeah, thank you. It's something we've been working on through the years, and I think where we are with it is really, really valuable. My biggest thing is that when you're doing this is the only time you're really ever going to see this design or these designs with fresh eyes. You're gonna take it home. You're gonna show it to your grandma. You're gonna ask your neighbor. You're gonna overthink it. You're gonna wake up in the middle of the night, and then you're gonna come back and tear everything apart. So there's a lot of value in not being affected by other people, but also having that document when we get over here, and it's potentially a totally different looking design. But going back to what did I actually really like about this, and what didn't I like, and have we moved too far away? So I do force everybody to say likes and don't likes. Some people will say, you know, some people aren't terribly good at that. They only want to do the don't likes, but it's important. There's something likable about all of them, and there's a lot of learning in that. And then we discussed it as a group. Once opened it up, we defined the strengths, the weaknesses, and then we agreed on next steps. And that, to me, is a very important part of that. Is let's all be clear on what those next steps are, and decide as a group that that's what we're going to do. And then follow up with an email afterwards and say, hey, I'm not going to work on this again for a couple of days. If you have anything else that pops into your head, shoot it over to me, and we'll see what we can do. So here are the initial concepts. As you can see, we were pretty consistent with our color. I tend to do that because color is such a polarizing design element that I like to start off. I used to try to do everything in black and white, but I realized that that was too difficult for a lot of folks to translate. So we tend to pick a general palette and at least stick with it through the initial concepts. And then adjust from there so that people aren't going, well, I like that one, but I hate red, so I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with that one. The consistent thing throughout all of this was that M, really focusing on marketing as our central piece. And as you can see from the top left, we tried one that was pretty close into the M, a little bit more refined version of that, which it turned out looked a lot like Microsoft icons, which is always interesting. That's a fun game when you start throwing these out there and they're like, oh, that looks exactly like this, or that reminds me of this. And then you have to go, look, there are only so many letters in the alphabet and we're trying to make a unique one. So it's that whole game with branding, right? How unique can you be, but also hold true to what you want to do as a brand. And then I think what we did, Natalia, if I remember correctly, we had a lot of people that liked individual ones. I think there might have been one of them that everybody was like, no, we don't need that. But there were elements to all of them that we knew we wanted to pull through.
Yeah, nobody really like all sat on one concept over another. I think you really encouraged us to speak to the pieces that we did like about each of them, so that, you know, we would be a little bit more open-minded. It was a great process. Well,
and also because a lot of us are involved in branding, I said, you know, I do respect your knowledge and your abilities, but I don't want you to tell me a font. I want you to tell me how you feel about this. Like what, you know, this feels too professional. This feels too loose, or, you know, like that. And I think everybody did a great job of doing that. And it helped move us along well. You know, like elements like the brackets on that lower left-hand corner one was something that everybody liked. They didn't necessarily like the M's in there, but that is something that we carried through into that branding system.
Mm-hmm.
So round two, we moved forward with the ones that we knew we were interested in and refined them a bit and then showed them in action. So this is also something I like to do because a logo can look great on a piece of paper on a screen, and then when you try to plug it in and use it in different areas, it can present itself as difficult. So there was this guy, this one, and then this guy. And you'll see we use that M in the lower right-hand corner from the get-go. I'm a big fan of branding system and not just a brand. So like for TIV branding, our logo is always in a specific spot. I call it magnetic. It sticks up to either to the top left corner or the lower right corner. So stuff like that. And that's the same thing we've got going with the M, where it's a system. So if you're not even seeing the logo in and of itself, you're still recognizing that brand. That can also be photo treatments. That can be all sorts of different things. And here's where we ended up. So this is our logo.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! There was also a lot of conversation about the educate, connect, inspire, the order that went in, and we used those brand drivers as helping to inform that conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next steps were and are, you know, like I said, that full branding system. So how do we use that M? How do we use those brackets moving forward? And then we presented the final to the board for approval. We all said yay, and here we are. So we're continuing to roll out the marketing assets. I think when you have the if you don't have an urgent timeline, it's always nice to start seeing the brand in action and start implementing it into various things. Experiment with it a bit before you really jump into your style guide. I like a style guide, absolutely, especially when you start getting down and you end up in those scenarios like we were talking about where people are starting to get bored. So pulling people back and using that as a tool to say, okay, that's cool, we can do that. But that means we're going to change the style guide. It's funny how quickly people will be like, well, let me think about that. So we don't have a style guide yet, but I think we probably will before too long.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much for walking us through this. It's really nice to see sort of how far the PMG brand has come as an organization. As we talked about earlier, we continue to evolve. There's so much that we do want to see for this brand, and we've slowly but surely implemented the right pieces. A lot of that comes along with the right board members. I can't stress enough how important it is that we have the right people in play. For me, it was important to fill certain needs from the last board, and as we continue to move forward, same thing. Actually, this is a good opportunity to say, if anybody on this call that is not on the board is interested in ever participating in the PMG board, let us know. We would love to have folks that believe and breathe in this brand, that come to our events, and that want us to continue to support the local marketing community. We'd love to have you. Let us know if you're interested. Yeah, for us, the biggest goal, like I said, with this Lunch and Learn in particular, was just reminding you to reconnect with your brand. It is constantly evolving, whether you see it or not. Sometimes we get tunnel vision. It's really easy to get tunnel vision and want to believe that everything that you're working so hard for is feeding it in the right way. Sometimes it's not, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. Sometimes it just means that it's evolving, that people are starting to see it in a different light. There's constantly new competitors coming into the space. Maybe a pandemic happened and we just have to be flexible and learn from that. So definitely encourage you to take this time, if you are still working with your teams, to have these conversations. Take a look at all of the efforts that you're putting forth, especially if they are targeting this time with COVID. It's really important to see what is working, what isn't, and try something new, experiment, disrupt the situation a little bit, and see maybe what new exciting things can come out of those conversations with your team. So,
yeah, I think if there's one good thing we can take from all this is it really has shaken everything up. I mean, everything we knew, especially when you're talking about digital, is just like different. Yeah. So great. Horrible how it had to come to this, but let's take advantage of that. Let's try some new stuff, and it'll be interesting to see, when we come out the other side, how it changed everything permanently, which I think it will.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this, like you said, Natalia, this is the perfect opportunity. You may have people that are, not working full time, but they would probably love to have him input on this. So, work with your team on assessing your audience. And it's funny how many people know a lot about their competition, but really don't know their audience very well. I don't know what that is. I think that's the kind of competitive nature of business. I don't know. But it's important stuff, so put your team to work playing with that.
Love it. Well, this is our Q&A time. If anyone's got some questions, I think we had a few submitted directly to Sarah. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
And just a reminder, if any of you have last minute questions, put them in the Q&A and I will get to them. Let's see, first question. I love this one. I have a logo, so I'm good to go, right?
Have you learned nothing today?
That depends entirely on your business, frankly. Like I have had people that come to me and they just need a logo at this point. They just need something that I'm like, go to whatever. I don't even want to name a specific one, but whatever, because it's horrible. Like $5 for a designer to do but whatever. If you have something nice looking, there's not going to be any strategy behind it. So it's not going to serve you anywhere beyond being like, oh, look, I at least am putting a kind of a professional foot forward.
Yeah, agreed. There's got to be more meat to that. There's an absolute strategy that should go behind your brand, and a logo is one very small piece, as you've learned today, one very small piece of that greater equation. So you're good to go for a hot minute, and then you've got a little bit more work to do.
Yep.
Next question. Do colors really matter? Can't I just pick my favorite color and move on?
Well, I think that's depends on what you're asking. Are you, if you're asking about, like, there are a lot of color studies and, like, you know, how they make you feel. My impression and any research I've done into it has been that a lot of that is no longer terribly applicable. And I don't know whether that's just the way the world has changed. It used to be, you know, if I was designing food packaging, I was not to use the color blue. For whatever reason, it was like a no, it sold less. That's not true anymore. So I think that, yes, you should look into colors and how they are supposed to make people feel and take that into account. But I think it has more to do with what's appealing and works with the audience that you're shooting to appeal to.
Yeah, and the 2 cents that I'll add to that, because I agree. I think that there used to be a lot of sort of more like traditional old school rules that went along with choosing colors. I agree. I don't see that so much anymore. What I would be more concerned about if somebody did come to me and said, I want, you know, I'm a life sciences or healthcare company, I want blue in my logo. I would have them take a look at their top 10 competitors, and I can almost guarantee you that every single one has blue in their logo. It's like a color that industry chooses. So again, if you are making the effort to stand out, you've done your homework through this branding process and strategy, you will learn through that. And colors is absolutely one of the things that you learn from. So I always encourage clients, you know, as we're going through this process, I ask a million questions to sort of spit it back in a way that has them look at almost like in a mirror, like, this is what you've given me. Is this accurate? And sometimes the colors go along with that. Sometimes somebody will pick a color that I'm like, that's not at all the color you should be using. Here is why. Or, I appreciate that you want to use that color, but it might work against you, and here's why. Or, this color is similar to that one, and here's why it will work for you. So there are definitely reasons for picking colors, but I agree. I don't think that they're the traditional sort of old school, the largest brands only use primary colors rule. Like, I don't think that that's so much in existence anymore.
No, and I'm writing actually midway through an article right now talking about how branding it's great to stand out, but there's also some beauty in being associated with something. So immediately, especially if you're a small company, if you can
recognizable.
Oh, look, organic, or oh look, cannabis, or whatever it is, based on this general design or color or whatever, shoot, do that. Yeah, absolutely. And then if you need to evolve into your own ownable brand, then you can do that down the line.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. What do you read or listen to keep up to date on the marketing world? Any good books, podcasts, sites, etc.? Tongue twister.
Oh, that's a really good one. This is more from an internal standpoint, but actually Brant turned me on to a few podcasts. The one that I've been listening to a lot, and I think it also could probably speak to the in-house marketer. Maybe not all of the episodes. I've also been picky and choosy, but it's that Two Bobs podcast, which I think is a hilarious name. Blair Enns is one of the hosts.
Made that association with Office Space. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great podcast. I think what I love about it is they really talk about it. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the intention of the podcast is really to talk to those in-house agency folks, but a lot of their topics really cross the entire gamut that is marketing, including sales, including tone and voice, including management, including audience. So there's a lot in there, and I've just been picky and choosy with the episodes that I pick, but I have come away so much with just gems of like inspiration by listening to that. So I would share that one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's my favorite for sure. I do think that a lot of it is more pointed at how to run a creative But I agree with you that it is, it's got some really pertinent stuff and a lot of really cool positioning conversations. That's where a lot of people have learned a lot about that. I'm trying to think what other, I know Bo's been pushing me to read Story Brand, which
great.
and actually the other thing that I've been on recently has been Daniel Pink, and he wrote Drive. So it's the surprising truth about what really motivates people. And I wrote it from the read it from the perspective of trying to help manage a creative team, which is sometimes difficult because a lot of different motivations. But I think it's really applicable in marketing as well, because it's about what people really want, and it's not necessarily what you would traditionally think. Again, I'm not sure this is specifically good marketing stuff, but good knowledge stuff for sure.
And I like that one. Yeah, I mean, if anyone else that's still on the call, if you guys have got some great resources, please share them in the chat. I'd love to know what else to listen to or pick up. So
Yeah, me too.
The Compound Effect was one that I really enjoyed by Darren.
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
I was scrolling through my book list, and I'm like, I know I've got something there. All right, next question. How many cooks should be in the kitchen? I work in a professional firm with 80 people, assuming we need to include the CEO and marketing team, but are there suggestions on who else should be included?
That's a great question. I think that's going to have to be segmented. At least that's how I would do it. Too many cooks in the kitchen does get a little overwhelming, and I think it depends on where you are in your process, or which pieces of the process make the most sense. I think sometimes, and especially, by the way, in the way that you run that process, I think for us, for example, when Brant was reviewing our initial, or asking for our initial review or feedback of the brands, that was a silent exercise. Everybody participated, but it was a silent exercise. I really think that that's incredibly powerful. I think general surveying and thoughts are obviously a great way to incorporate everybody into that process. I think it depends on where you are in that process. If it's early on, there's a very good chance that I would keep that to a small group as possible. But the more clarity you have in terms of the higher level buckets or drivers, then the easier it is to start bringing folks in, because at least you're giving them sort of a more funneled piece of information that they can then digest and process. But yeah, I think that might come down to segmenting it out and bringing people in where it makes sense, because that is a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because design by committee is a bad thing for sure. So the way I've always dealt with it is really kind of involving people and understanding, first of all, who needs to be involved and who's going to have a say. And it might be someone that doesn't say they really want to, but they do, and trying to unearth that. And then get them involved, especially in that initial discover phase, and then present them with a strategy and say, hey, does this make sense to everybody? Because then again, that becomes that okay, this is the direction we went down, and someone may say they don't like it. Well, okay, let's look back at the strategy. Does it line up with the strategy? And not to be rude, but I don't care if you like it. It's your audience that likes it. Right. Of course, I would not say that to them, but that's what I'm thinking. And it really is that walk a mile. And that's how I reinforce that. It's like, yeah, sure. We can totally do that. But look at the strategy that we all agreed on. And I don't think that lines up with it. It works sometimes, doesn't always work.
Well, we're actually at about 1:30 now, and I understand that people probably have very busy days and such. Do we have any other questions, Sarah?
We don't.
Okay. Hey, look at us. We made things happen. Thank you guys so much for participating today. After the webinar is over, you guys will be sent a survey link. please, 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 as always, we encourage you to give us your feedback, positive, negative, constructive. We want to learn from you. Again, to this point, we want to make sure that what we're doing is what you're expecting, what you're looking for. We want to be able to support our marketing community. Let us know about this webinar in particular. Did you like this format as a webinar? Did you like the contents, the information? Did it help? Did it jog more conversation? We're going to work to gather all of these resources that we've talked about today. We'll post them on the website, including copy of slides, including a recording of this webinar. So again, thank you so much for being here today. Brant, thank you for co-hosting, co-paneling with me. I appreciate your help as well.
Absolutely, felt like one of our lunches. It was fun to do. So, and I appreciate all the comments. I've been reading them as we've gone, and the conversation. Reach out directly if you have any questions. I'm always available.
Yeah, you can reach out to any of us, by the way, on the website. If you go to the About tab, you'll see a listing of all of us board members. You do have access to email us directly if you have any questions or if you'd like to connect further. Hopefully when this is all over, Brant, you and I can get together for lunch and a beer again and keep talking about what we're doing.
Let's do it.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.